CBS News White House and senior foreign affairs correspondent Margaret Brennan is following the latest in Moscow. Margaret, so what is at stake as Tillerson meets with Lavrov, especially as tensions escalate between the U.S. and Russia over Syria?
Well, exactly that. The rhetoric is ramping up at a time when it really is a full court press diplomatically to cool things off and to make the U.S. case that if Russia and the U.S. want to have better relations, that requires Moscow to take a step back from Bashar al-Assad and take a step forward in terms of negotiating a way for him to leave power and to have a ceasefire to end this brutal more than 6-year war. So that's the U.S. case that's being made. And that is actually what is being made more difficult when you have those comments today by President Vladimir Putin publicly saying that President Trump has actually damaged trust. And back in Washington, you have this case being made very publicly, responding to rhetoric out of Moscow to show that actually the U.S. has evidence to back up its military actions and that this wasn't just all made up to frame Assad, which is what Vladimir Putin claimed just again this morning.
Margaret, back in December of 2016, there was a headline in the Financial Times: Vladimir Putin expresses hope for improved Russia-U.S. relations. This in the wake of President Obama leaving office and President Trump coming into office. Now, Russian President Vladimir Putin, speaking earlier, said the level of trust between the U.S. and Moscow has deteriorated under President Trump. So how will this impact Tillerson's trip and the relationship between the two countries going forward?
Well, it's certainly making the diplomacy more difficult. But what I would say is that both President Trump and President Putin tend to be tacticians here. They tend to be very transactional. And the U.S. message that Secretary Tillerson said he's bringing here is that if you want that better relationship, here's what you have to do to earn it. And that requires Syria really being the main topic today. But until last Tuesday when that gas attack happened in Syria, the topic here was supposed to be other issues, including pressuring Moscow to stop meddling in elections in Europe and the U.S. The State Department also said they wanted to talk about the military interference in Ukraine. Remember, that's what those costly financial sanctions are related to there. So that's a point of leverage for the United States, saying if you want us to reconsider things like sanctions, you actually have to help end this horrible war in Syria. There are also conversations about arms control treaties that the U.S. accuses Russia of breaking, and that matters because you're talking about further development of nuclear missiles. So really the costs here are quite high if the temperature isn't lowered through this round of talks today and over the next few weeks.
Margaret, I know you're getting a storm there, so I'm going to ask this last question quickly. I think the question many people want to know is, why is Russia continuing to support Assad? Why?
Well, look, we talked to Kremlin watchers here who said, look, if the U.S. hadn't carried out that strike, they might have actually had a better chance at convincing Vladimir Putin to take a step back from Assad. But I will tell you, after many years of covering the rounds of diplomacy that Hillary Clinton and John Kerry pushed here with the Russians, that they've been claiming for a long time that they are not wedded to Assad. They are wedded to their strategic interest in terms of military bases in Syria, and basically in terms of not publicly looking like they're buckling to U.S. pressure. There's a certain amount of pride here that's also related. So having this all done out in the open publicly is something that can be difficult for Russia to do. They don't want to look like they're not acting from a position of strength. And that is why the Obama administration pushed Russia to say, hey, help us be partners here. You can be in charge of even the diplomacy, and that's really what you hear Secretary Tillerson signaling in these last few days. This isn't about Russia looking weak. You can look strong, but do so diplomatically if you negotiate a way for there to be peace in Syria and to end this awful war and get your client to stop killing people with chemical weapons.
Margaret Brennan reporting from Moscow. Margaret, thank you.